The first college football rankings are out. Alabama's at 11. How are you feeling about that?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA's radio network. Luke Robinson, that's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. I'll tell you about Game Time in just a little bit. Jimmy, the college football playoff rankings were released. I think something else was going on last night, but I was watching the college football playoff rankings because that's the one thing I know I can trust in.
I don't even trust those, and I don't really trust
those. Anyway, so Alabama's at 11. Where did you say they were going to be?
I said 11, but I said 11, and but I said that I thought if they weren't 11, they would be higher, but 11 was correct.
And I was hoping. I mean, I thought you would be right, but I was hoping that would be just out to sort of give us an extra oomph for this game this weekend. But 11's fine. I mean, we'll take it. And here's the other thing. You know, Alabama and Ohio State are the only two teams that have been in every single college football ranking since they started doing this. And I guess they're considering, I wonder, are they considering that the ranking meaning you're in the top 25?
Right.
That just dawned on me.
I'm sure that's true because, obviously the top 12 didn't matter until this year. You know, in previous years, all that really mattered was the top 4, right? I mean, the whole committee was formed to identify the 4 best, not the 12 best. But, you know, I'm somewhat satisfied where Alabama is in terms of, hey, Alabama's in the playoff field. You got to remember, some Alabama fans out there, Luke, and I read a lot of opinions out there. Some Alabama fans thought that with 2 losses, including a loss to Vanderbilt, that the playoff was over, that Alabama wasn't going to get in. And I knew that wasn't correct. I knew Alabama was look, Alabama's in today. If they had the playoff today, Alabama's in it. And there's still 4 games to go, including a game that can impress everyone by beating an LSU team that's ranked in the top 15, beating them on the road. So Alabama's in with a chance to move up and get a good seed. So the 2 losses, including the loss to Vanderbilt, hurt. They put Alabama in danger of not making the playoff, but Alabama would have to lose again to not make it. And obviously there's a heck of an opportunity for that this weekend. But where I was upset about the rankings, and I'm about to write a column that'll be posted on BOL about this, and I'll talk about it now, but just shocking inconsistencies throughout the poll in terms of how they valued strength of schedule. For instance, they clearly look at strength of schedule. That's why Army is undefeated in number 25. But how can you say, well, we're going to put Army at 25 because their schedule's bad? I know they're undefeated, but their schedule's bad. And then put Indiana at 8. Their schedule's 103. Army's is 133. Yeah, Army's is worse, but not dramatically worse. Then they seem to favor strength of schedule by, for instance, Alabama's the highest ranked 2-loss team. That means they must have looked at strength of schedule because Alabama has the highest strength of schedule of all the 2-loss teams. But then you look at a 3-loss team. They do have a 3-loss team in the poll. It's Louisville with 3 losses. They're in the poll. Who's not? South Carolina. Guess what? South Carolina's played a tougher schedule than Louisville. Why is Louisville in and South Carolina's not when South Carolina's played the tougher schedule? Georgia has played the toughest schedule of all the 1-loss teams. Are they a 1-loss team? No, they're not. Ohio State is, who's played a lesser schedule than Georgia. That's what I mean by this committee looks at strength of schedule and gives it that it makes it a factor, but it's not the factor, and it needs to be the factor. The NCAA basketball committee greatly values strength of schedule when they invite teams to the NCAA basketball tournament and then seed the teams. It's almost all about strength of schedule. Heck, they'll put in teams that had a strong strength of schedule that didn't even win many games. But if you played a tough schedule, you're getting in. And obviously you have to win enough games to do that. But the point is, the football committee has never been that way. They only care about your one-loss record largely, and it's wrong. And I'm once again screaming from the mountaintops, Alabama's got to cancel all these tough non-conference games.
Okay. That's where I'm going with this. Number one, let me tell you where I disagree with you, and then I'm mostly on your side. The only thing I disagree with you on is I think it's an amalgam of your strength of schedule, probably your brand, to be fair, your record, how you win, things like that. But I think the problem is the amalgam is weighted differently. The formula is weighted differently depending on who you are. And that's why I'm okay with Indiana being 8. I am. But I'm not okay with Indiana 8 and Army where they are. Like, I'm just like you. But I'm not. I get it. It's like I guess I'm agreeing with you, and I'm wondering where I'm disagreeing. But it's like I think people get mad because they want a certain criteria, like you must follow this path. And I think that it is fair to say some of it is ambiguous. But I think if Army were 19 and Indiana were 10, I think everybody would be a lot more on board.
Yeah. And that's what I want. I want Indiana a little lower and Army a little higher.
Because I think it is also clear to say, okay, Army's schedule is 133 and Indiana's is 103, and that's not like crazy difference. They're both really bad, but Indiana is playing in a Power 4 conference, which does make a difference, right?
Yeah, it does. But why? And I agree that should make a difference because it sounds like Indiana's playing a tougher schedule because they're in the second best conference. But for whatever reason, because of the cards and how they were shuffled and dealt, Indiana has just somehow played in the Big Ten and not played a tough schedule. As a matter of fact, I think they play Michigan this weekend, and that is going to be their toughest game so
by
far.
a long shot.
By a long shot. And Michigan is 5-4.
And Jimmy, here's the other thing. This is where I think you're right. And this is where I think the committee, they better get a handle on this. If I'm Alabama, now next year may not be as big a deal. I mean, next year on the surface, you see Bama's playing at Florida State and Wisconsin at home. Well, if Florida State's anything like this Florida State, I'm okay with it. And Wisconsin, I don't think can play with us, especially in Tuscaloosa. I mean, we've already beaten their brakes off in Wisconsin. But later on, when we have Ohio State and we have Notre Dame on the schedule, cancel those mothers.
There's just no benefit. There's no benefit. If you're playing those games because you're like, our brand, let's promote our brand. Let's get in as many TV sets as possible. Let's have Alabama play the significant games of the weekend. Okay, if that's your goal, then tell us this is what we're doing. Because if your goal is to make the playoff, playing in those games is ridiculous. You're not required to play in the games at all. I think there is a scheduling requirement right now that you must schedule one Power 4 team in your non-conference. Fine. Then play the worst team in the Big 12
every time.
Play Purdue. I mean, let's go sign contracts with Purdue and Wake.
And here's the thing: you sign up Purdue, you sign up Wake because you know they ain't getting better. They ain't no way. Now, see, Indiana, while they are historically bad, their admission requirements aren't as tough, I don't think, as Purdue's or Wake Forest. And so, and Purdue and Wake Forest they just ain't going to do it. And so, I'm with you. And I'm not trying to take a shot at Purdue, Wake Forest, or Indiana.
Me neither. I'm just saying that I'd rather there's no benefit to playing a tough schedule if the committee only gives a passing glance to strength of schedule. And that's what bothers me. They do look at it, but it ain't. I mean, for instance, Georgia and Ohio State are with one loss or ahead of undefeated Miami. Why? Because Miami hasn't played a tough schedule and they've struggled to win some games.
And that makes sense.
So that's good. That shows, okay, now there's some level of strength of schedule importance. But again, Ohio State being ahead of Georgia means they don't really, put that much into strength of schedule, or Georgia would be rightly ahead of Ohio State. Georgia has played the number one schedule. They should be the highest ranked one-loss team, but they're not.
Well, and again, I think you and I both are okay with Indiana being in the top 12.
Yeah. I'm not trying to diminish what Indiana's done. I'm just saying they shouldn't be ahead of teams with 1 or even 2 losses.
Let me say
that have
this.
played a more substantial schedule.
I'm okay with Indiana being in the top 12 right now. I think 8's probably a little high. I think it's rewarding a terrible schedule, even though you got to respect what they're doing because they're Indiana. But if Indiana, and forget about the Michigan part, Michigan's not good this year. Okay. If you're going to ignore years of Indiana being bad for their brand, then you also must ignore Michigan winning a national championship last year when they're bad this year as their brand. My point is when Indiana beats Michigan next weekend, and they will, they're a 2-touchdown favorite. We don't need to give them too much credence for that. The only way, if you ask me, here's the thing. I think Indiana's also in the playoffs right now. Because if you ask me, if Indiana loses at Ohio State, they're out. They have nothing else to hang their head on.
I would agree that they should be judged harshly with their loss to Ohio State. I mean, I can't remember what I want to give him credit. I think Cole Kubelik or somebody pointed out Indiana could finish 11-1 and not have a win over a team that was given a single point in the AP top 25. That no one's ever voted anyone in the top 25.
And meanwhile,
anybody that they've beaten, and that has to be taken into account. And hey, look, eyeball test. I think Indiana's up there because eyeball test. I've seen them play. I agree. They look impressive doing what they're doing, and they are dispatching teams easily. And I think they are one of the better teams in the country. But ultimately, it's the same point as Notre Dame. I'll talk about that real quick. Notre Dame, schedule strength 71, and they lost worse than Alabama's, and they're ahead of Alabama.
Now, one other thing. As of right now, there's only one team on Alabama's schedule that has a losing record, and that's Auburn. And see, whereas Indiana has nobody that's worth a dang. And let me say this. Auburn, even with their losing record, is better than most everybody on Indiana's schedule outside of probably Michigan and Indiana. And Ohio State.
If Indiana played at Auburn, I would not assume an Indiana win. I think
agree.
I think they would likely win.
Totally,
I wouldn't assume it.
All right, I want to talk a little bit game time right now because game time is the absolute best. And you can use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but just go to Game Time, download it. You've heard me talk about it. I've used it for everything, from World Series to college baseball to college football to pro football to NBA to college basketball to concerts to everything, because you can see where you're going to sit. And that makes all the world of difference. I used it for the Wisconsin game. I had some buddies just use it for the Oklahoma game. I might use it this weekend for the Alabama basketball game. I'm hoping to take my daughter. My wife's going to Africa. She just loves to travel, so she's going to Africa. And I'm going to be there with my daughter. Yeah, she's going to leave on Friday and come back Monday. It's going to be a quick trip. No, I'm kidding. But so anyway, please go check out Game Time. Use that code LOCKEDONCollege. Let us know in our Twitter feeds, either Jimmy or me, that you used them. We'd appreciate it. And you'll love Game Time. What time is it? It's Game Time. And you know it's Game Time. So go get you some Game Time. I got to carry this conversation over because, boy, I'm so happy you and I are on the same page here. And we're kind of talking about what I think a lot of people glossed over last night. Everybody's so captivated by the rankings right now. And a friend of mine who is very pro-expansion was like, see how much better this is? And I was like, look, nobody ever said this wouldn't be dramatic and fun. It is dramatic and fun. But I'm just saying, I don't know that this is the best way to determine who the best team in the country is. But that being said, I'm not going to talk about that anymore because I have to embrace this because this is what it is. And we're not going back to a 4-team playoff. No. So I'm letting that go. I just want to let y'all know that. Now, what I did want to bring up was so the way the playoffs would fall. And again, this is a stupid part of the playoffs. We should all agree on this. That Oregon would still be at 1. Georgia would move up to 2 because Ohio State has to fall back to 5 because you can't have 2 teams from the same conference in the top 4. Then you have Miami at 3 and BYU at 4. Now, I know BYU undefeated. I know that they're probably going to win their conference. There's no way on earth BYU should get a bye in this. Their schedule also is not fantastic.
They're not the fourth best team.
They're not the fourth best team.
I'm cool with BYU getting. I mean, they've earned a lot here. And by the way, their schedule hasn't been that bad. I mean, their schedule
is not bad.
Fairly good. And that but you're right. I mean, BYU being a top 4 seed is kind of silly.
Yeah, that Locked On. Did you get a shirt from Locked On yesterday? They sent me a shirt and this little squeezy thing that's pretty cool.
It probably got sent to my other place.
Okay. Well, anyway, so I'm just squeezing on this thing while we're this thing. I need to clarify for those who can't see while we're doing this. But yeah, BYU. No shot at BYU. They're not the 4th best team in the country. So why do we make it where we have to put the conference champions in the top 4? And you say, well, that's some kind of reward for them. The reward, just make the reward, you automatically get in.
You're in.
The
reward should be that you're in.
Because again, Ohio. Now, here's the other thing. I'm with you on the Ohio State thing too. That Georgia at least played Clemson. Ohio State didn't play diddly pea squat. So
no, and yeah, I mean, Georgia's just played a tougher schedule. You know why I think Ohio State's ahead of Georgia? I guess this is why, because last Saturday, 4 days ago, Ohio State beat Penn State.
That's true.
Struggled to beat Florida. I guess that's why. But I thought this committee was doing it different than the AP poll. I thought this committee was looking at your resume, which means going all the way back to week 1. What have you done from week 1 all the way through week 9? And we're going to evaluate all of it. And then each week we're going to crumble it up and throw it away and start all over again, evaluating the whole of the season. But that's clearly not what they did there. They just said, well, Ohio State looked better than Georgia 3 days ago. So
let's also be fair. Let's also be fair that given this system, see, I would be madder about that if you didn't have automatic champions going in there, because the way the system is, they can put Ohio State at 2 and really not have any argument the other way, because Ohio State automatically goes to 5.
Yeah. So Georgia, 5's a good spot to be. I even wrote one time that 5 might be a better spot than 1 in this sense. You don't get the bye, but 5 gets to play the group of 5 team in the first round. At home, you're hosting the group of 5 team. And then in the second round, you're playing the worst conference champion. I mean, that 5 spot's sweet. I mean,
not even the worst conference champion. You're playing arguably the 10th, 11th, or 12th best team in this whole thing.
Correct.
You might be playing a team that's actually worse than the team you play in the first round.
That's right. You're probably playing, in essence, the 12th best team and the 11th best team, and boom, you're in the semifinals.
Yep. That's why it's stupid.
5 is a sweet spot.
God, but now here's the other thing. So because Ohio State moves to the 5 spot, Texas gets bumped back to 6. So in this scenario, let me just read this is all going to change, but it's just talking stuff right now.
But it's a good look at what it's going to look like in terms of big picture.
The matchups would be Ohio State hosting Boise, Tennessee hosting Indiana. And by the way, we've been saying Indiana was 8. They're actually 9. No, they're 8, but they get bumped back. So Ohio State thing.
They're 8th in the ranking, but they're a 9th seed.
Yeah. Penn State and Notre Dame. Penn State would host Notre Dame, and Texas would host Bama. And boy, if this were, let's say it fell this way, it won't. There's no way it will.
Welcome to the playoff, Alabama. Nice reward.
Yeah, you would have to face Texas, then play Miami in a neutral site, then play Georgia in a neutral site, then play Oregon if everything went chalk. That's bananas.
That is bananas, but I don't know that Alabama would get out of Austin, to be honest. I mean, that's not the toughest game. I mean, I probably hold Texas in higher regard, and since I've said all along, and I think Luke did too, that Texas would win the SEC, and I picked Texas to win the national championship. So I think playing in Austin, that game would be a tough ask. Yeah,
there's no doubt, and I think you'll see some changes in this projected playoff this weekend, frankly. So I think next weekend is going to look a little different. And I think if you're Alabama, you desperately look. Alabama won't be the 12 seed because that'll be reserved probably for a Boise State or an
Most
Army.
likely, but Boise could end. I mean, Boise keeps
Could.
winning. They could end up higher than 12. They
I
could.
don't think so, though. I just don't see it. In the end, I don't think they have the guts to do it. But let's say this. I think if you're Bama, you at least want to get to number 10. If you get to 10, I think you avoid a Texas, you avoid Ohio State. Yeah, you might have to play Penn State, or Notre Dame. I'm all at their place, and it'll be cold as a witch's bra, but I'll take it, Right. So anyway, all right. So we're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of these other topics we said we were going to talk about that we hadn't talked about yet. As it stands, though, I'm going to tell you about Academy. Look, we were just at Academy. You hopefully you came out and saw us. Your new Academy Sports and Outdoor store is now open in Birmingham with all the best sports equipment, outdoor gear, apparel, footwear, and brands that you love, all at low prices every day. We carry a wide selection of trusted brands like Nike and Stanley and Brooks and Carhartt and Blackstone and Yeti and Titleist and Shimano and more. Academy has everything you need to gear up for fun, camping, hunting, fishing, tailgating, whatever you need, they got it. Your new Academy Sports and Outdoor store is located at 4610 US Highway 280 in Birmingham. It's in that Target shopping center. It's where the old Best Buy used to be. Y'all know it well. You've been up and down 280. You know where that thing is. Go check out Academy. They got everything, man. That store is huge, and they got everything you want. And tell them Luke and Jimmy sent you, because we did. I mean, we did. Essentially. I mean, they're open because of us, right?
Yeah, we were the big wavy, the wavy guy with the wind machine.
That would be funny if they had me or you just like.
Yeah, no, that's what we were. That's what we were that day.
Really quickly, apropos of nothing, but for whatever reason, my daughter, who's 8, now has gotten into this your mom thing. It's not yo mama, but it's your mom. It's like the more
same joke
formal version. She's like, I'm like, hey, Sheila, where did you put your shoes? Your mom would know. Well, why? I mean, I'm like, what? But it was funny. And then so one of her friends.
I find great humor in it for no reason at all. It's funny.
It's funny, and I want to get mad at her, but I do find the humor in it. I also find the humor in it being very Mountain Brook, like your mother knows where it is. But her friend was riding in the car with us the other day and said, I got a joke. And I said, all right, what is it? And she said, your mom went scuba diving, and she saw a whale. And the whale said, we are family, even though you're fatter than me. And for whatever reason, I fell out. So
this is your DNA, no question. The Maury Povich show is not necessary. That is your kid.
We have determined you are the father. So really quickly, Jimmy, your stock up, stock down for the season so far. I'm going to just give you really quickly. Because you can tell me if it matches up. My stock down, boy, I hate doing this. God forgive me. My stock down a little bit is Jalen Milroe, but I'm going to tell you what. He's a buy. Jimmy, he's a buy stock right now. It fell a little bit. This is like if Apple came out with a new iPhone and you're like, oh, the settings app doesn't work great. And they're like, yeah, but we're sending you an update that's going to fix it. And so when the settings update doesn't do well, when the settings app doesn't do well, you're like, the stock drops a little bit. But when they send you that update, stock's going to go like this. I'm a buy on Jalen Milroe, but from the beginning of the season, his stock is down a little bit to me.
From the beginning, but I'm going all the way back to like fall camp. I mean, in my mind, I was like, what did I think of this team and these guys in fall camp, and whose stock is up and stock down since then? I didn't include Jalen for a couple of reasons, although I considered it. And if I had, I probably would have gone stock down. But some of that's recency bias, because who was saying stock down after Georgia? I mean, the Georgia game, Luke, was the pinnacle of his career. So I don't think his stock is down over the course of the season. And if Alabama wins out, makes the playoff, why Jalen Milroe?
Agreed. But I guess it all depends on when where's your cost basis is. Right. If your cost basis was a year and a half ago, then yeah, you're right. Stock up from that point. Right. I bought Jalen Milroe stock this year. I just bought some extra stock at the beginning of this season. I bet on him to win the Heisman Trophy, by the way. and that's not going to work out, but so be it. I got plus 500, and but the stock is down a little bit since then. So what are your other stock up, stock
He
down?
launched himself into the Heisman race last year based on his LSU performance. I think that could happen again this Saturday. Could. Stock down. I came up with this interesting stat. This will kind of blow you away just in terms of the round number of it. But stock down, I didn't want to say stock down Jam Miller or stock down Justice Haynes. But what I said was stock down was the Jam and Justice show. I just thought that the running back position would be a centerpiece of the offense, would be very productive, that both would be great. And it just hasn't happened. I'm not blaming it, though, on Jam or Justice entirely, although I do think they both need to play better and more consistently. I think a lot of it is usage. But how about this stat? Through 8 games, if you add up what the Jam and Justice show have done, how about this? 8 games, 800 yards, dead on the nose. 8 games, 800 yards. So, again, that's not terrible. It's not pathetic. As a matter of fact, both kids are averaging over 6 yards a carry, which is pretty impressive. But 8 games, 800 yards. So we are getting literally and exactly 100 yards of production per game from a combination of Jam and Justice. And I just thought there would be more. And is it their fault? Probably not entirely. I think only partially. But it's very interesting. 8 games, 800 yards.
I'm with you on that.
Stock up: Caden Proctor, Ryan Williams, C.J. Dupree, L.T. Overton, Quay Russaw, and Zabian Brown. Again, going back to fall camp and what we thought that we were going to be getting from those guys, I think stock up for all 6 of them in particular. And again, base it on what you thought in August, not what you thought over the course of the season. What you thought in August till now, I think those 6 in particular stock up.
Yeah, I think all those guys are stock up. I mean, there's some obvious stock downs that we could go to, but let's be happy.
My only other stock down was I chickened out or took the simple way out and said Jaheim Otis. He is stock.
That's hitting it right on the head, though, man.
I went back to August. How about this? People don't remember this, and I have no idea why my voice is like this. But Jaheim Otis started both scrimmages. The scrimmages before the season started, Luke, the fall camp scrimmages, Jaheim Otis was a starter in both of those scrimmages and has gone from there to off the team. That's why I said stock down. And I know he's been banged up a little bit, and he obviously left the team, but he's just not today what I thought he would be this season. I thought he would be a significant contributor. And again, a starter back in August to, hey, I'm not getting any snaps, I'm leaving.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with our predictions. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.